we believe, after discussing that, one of the ways that we could bring the dual perspective into the problem in the community would be by kind of having this thing where we have separate groups, and we would have one group that would consist of the elder people in the community, and one that would be the younger people, and we would have separate meetings where we kind of ask them like these basic questions about what they believe to be the most important values from their culture, whatever that culture is that they identify with. And then we would kind of, as a social worker, take it and look at similarities, and then bring them together as like one cohesive group and say like, okay, well, after getting everyone's responses, we noticed that this is a similarity that we have and this is a similarity, and kind of just use the whole strength-based perspective to just fuel the dual perspective. So the community center could be something that was definitely by the community, for the community, and was really representative of all the aspects. One of the instruments that we looked at was the Cultural Adjustment Difficulties Checklist, which we thought would be really good just because it addresses acculturation by asking about language use, social customs, family interactions, and we think that that would be a useful tool to bring into the initial group meetings. It would be a self-test that the community members would fill out by themselves, and we would just kind of go based off whatever data we got from that.
So the recommendations and the change strategies that we have come up with to recommend to the agency based off of Table 6.3 is under the community-based prevention. And we decided on this one just because it seemed the most appropriate out of all the others from the table. And the types of activities that we would really look to use is the collaboration with elders. This is something that was mentioned before with having the separate groups. We would still do the separate groups, but we would make it a point, like when we do come together, to have like a steady collaboration with elders, and then have youth present there, because that way that can kind of help to bridge the intergenerational conflict that's going on, and also allows youth to still have a voice there, to where maybe there can be more open communication. The other thing that we were definitely looking at doing is having cultural revitalization activities. This can be something that can really work to bring everyone more towards the bicultural or a cultural setting. And one of a few of the ideas that we had was to maybe have an organization, like a college organization, come in where it's like a Vietnamese, maybe if there's like a Vietnamese college club, or a sorority or fraternity, somewhere where they're closer in age to the youth that are there. They can be a positive mentor for education, and then also, give their take on what it is to be a young Vietnamese person in this country, and kind of how to navigate having both identities as an American and as a Vietnamese person. And we would evaluate these, and just seeing, like, with the regular meetings with the elders and with the youth, like seeing, kind of just checking in and seeing like how everyone's feeling about any conflict, if there's been any improvement, if they feel like it's gotten worse, just kind of measuring it based off of that.
Thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate your time and your thank you. Why don't we just go ahead and get started?
Yeah, for sure.
So just a little bit about background about us. We are a Vietnamese community center, and we've just noticed that we've been having a little bit of conflict between our population. So just to give you like some brief background on what the position might entail for you.
Okay.
How do you work in culturally sensitive situations?
So I think just given like what I've already done, I definitely am someone that works a lot in communities that I don't necessarily identify from. Mm-hmm. So oftentimes I'll work with like lower income students, or I'll work with people that come from, their family comes from different countries, and like my family does. So it's something that I'm definitely really comfortable doing.
Right. Okay. Would you consider yourself to be knowledgeable about Vietnamese culture?
I think, I know a little bit. I know a lot of basic stuff. Definitely not an expert or anything. But I do come from Houston, which has like a really large Vietnamese population. So in just a lot of the work that I've done, I have come into contact with people from Vietnamese background.
Okay. Do you have any biases towards working with specific age groups or a specific ethnic group?
None in particular, and certainly none that I like allow to, really influence the way that I treat people, because, as social workers, we have to treat people all, the same and stuff. But definitely, I'm definitely, there's been times where I've been faced with a client where I wasn't particularly comfortable, and I always, just kick it up to my supervisor to let them know, whatever it is. I don't know if it's always because of, some like deep-seated bias, but it's definitely important to be aware.
Right. Okay. Have you ever had to manage intergenerational conflict? And if so, could you give me an example of how you handled the situation, or like background of what the situation was, and then how you managed it?
Sure. So I can't think of anything in particular that was entirely based in intergenerational conflict, but definitely like in some of the work that I've done when organizing communities and stuff, we have people that, some that are older members of the community and super active, and then some younger ones that are, members of the community and super active, and sometimes we'll, run into like roadblocks because they don't always see everything eye to eye, but I think it's always really important to just make sure that both people are equally heard, and that, when we're coming to a resolution, that we definitely consider both points of view when looking for a solution.
Right. That's a great point. How would you say that you build relationships?
So I definitely think that keeping in contact with people and kind of just putting yourself out there as a person is important. So, like if I know that there's any events going on in the city, whether that be like a lecture or like a community event, it's kind of open to anyone or anyone who just wants to know more, I definitely like to make sure that I'm there and I'm asking questions and I'm listening. So I think, showing up is a really important aspect of that.
Right. Just one final question. Like, how would you see yourself in our organization? Like, what role would you say that you would want to bring to our side?
Right, so I think like some type of role as a mediator, just given kind of the problem that's existing between the youth and elders. I think what the person who steps into the position is really going to have to understand that it's about bringing them together. It's not necessarily picking and choosing things from each culture. It's really going to be about like how do we, because it's not like my community center, right? So it's about building a community center that everyone feels as if they belong, regardless of how, Western they've become or whatever, right? It would just be, making sure that it's serving every member of the community and not just some.
Right. Those are all the questions that I have for you. Thank you so much for coming in today, and we'll let you know soon.
Thank you.
Reflecting on the interview that we just role played, we would definitely take into account the interviewee's past experience and see how they have managed conflict resolution, and see their background in community engagement with different minority groups, and see how they've handled that. And we also recognize that this is a process. It wouldn't just happen overnight, like where we find the perfect candidate for the position. We understand that there could be a new conflict that arises from this, so we would also just have to work from there and try to utilize the best resources that we have, because it won't be a problem that's solved overnight.